We've all spent thousands of hours sitting in a classroom, right? Learning algebra, memorizing dates in history, dissecting frogs in biology. But have you ever really stopped and asked yourself why? Why those specific subjects? Why that version of history? Well, it turns out none of what you learned was an accident. It's all part of a blueprint.
So let's get right into that fundamental question. Why on earth do schools teach what they teach? It sounds like a pretty simple question, but trust me, the answer gets to the absolute core of what we even think school is for.
You have to realize every single subject you learned, and maybe more importantly, every subject you didn't learn, was the result of a choice. And those choices are the product of this huge ongoing battle of ideas, a battle over the true purpose of school. Is it to build up the individual? Is it to serve society? Or maybe, is it to keep things pretty much exactly the way they are?
So let's start with the first and maybe most intuitive idea. It comes from one of the absolute giants of educational thinking, a guy named John Dewey. His whole thing was that learning has to start with a student's actual life.
Dewey's core idea was pretty simple, but revolutionary. You can't just pour knowledge into someone's head like it's an empty cup. It doesn't work. You have to connect new information to something that's already there. For him, a good education had to be rooted in the real, messy, lived experiences of the person doing the learning.
This whole philosophy is called experientialism. And the big idea is that we really learn by doing things, by having experiences, and then those experiences shape how we see the world going forward. This led directly to that expanding horizons model that you probably went through in elementary school. You start with me and my family, then you move out to the neighborhood, then the community, then the state, and pretty soon the whole world. It's a very logical inside-out progression.
But here's where things get interesting. Here's the first big point of tension. Dewey thought schools should feel like learning in the real world, active and based on doing stuff. But critics, like a thinker named Kieran Egan, pushed back hard. They ask, is learning about your local post office really what fascinates a child? Or are they way more captivated by dragons and monsters and ancient Egypt, these huge imaginative ideas that have nothing to do with their block? It's a powerful critique, right? Does starting with the mundane, the everyday, accidentally kill a kid's natural sense of wonder? Okay, let's totally shift gears for a second. What if the curriculum isn't really about the individual student at all? What if it's actually about shaping society? This brings us to a much more critical and kind of sneaky idea, the hidden curriculum. A theorist named Michael Apple came up with this term. He argued that underneath the official subjects, the math, the science, the history, there is a whole other set of unstated lessons being taught. These are the quiet lessons about how to behave, what counts as important knowledge, and, frankly, where you fit into the social pecking order. So how does this actually work? Well, according to Apple, it's pretty subtle. First, the curriculum tends to present knowledge as these objective, settled facts, totally stripping away the messy history of debate and conflict that created them. Then, it tends to just not talk about social struggle or big fundamental change. The combined effect is really powerful. It sends a quiet message that the way things are right now isn't just one possibility among many. It's the only natural, inevitable way for things to be. And this link between what we learn and how our society is structured, it gets even deeper when we look at the work of sociologist Basil Berstein. He took this idea a step further, arguing that the very way we talk about knowledge can create and reinforce social divisions.
Berstein saw two different kinds of knowledge. On one side, you have horizontal discourse. Think of this as everyday, common sense knowledge. It's super practical, but it's tied to specific situations. On the other side, there's vertical discourse. This is school knowledge. It's abstract, it's systematic, and he called it powerful knowledge for a reason, because it's the kind of knowledge that lets you take an idea from one context and apply it to a totally new one.
Now, here is where it gets really interesting. Berstein connected this to social class. He noticed that some families tend to use language where meanings are spelled out very explicitly. Others rely more on a shared context, where a lot is left unsaid. The problem? Schools are built almost entirely around that explicit style of communication. This means some kids show up on day one already speaking the language of school, while others face this invisible barrier, which can create a huge source of inequality right from the start.
Okay, so we've got the structure of the curriculum and the codes of knowledge, but what about the person actually standing at the front of the room? What's the role of the teacher in all this?
An educator named Lawrence Stenhouse had a really radical vision for this. He was convinced that real, meaningful change doesn't come from some top-down government mandate or a perfectly designed textbook. No. He believed it comes from the teachers themselves, acting like researchers in their own classrooms.
This really sets up two completely different views of what teaching is. The most common one is the objectives model, where the teacher is basically a technician delivering a pre-planned curriculum designed by someone else. But Stenhouse proposed a process model. In this world, the teacher isn't a delivery person, they're a neutral chairperson, a guide who helps students dig into complicated, controversial issues where the goal isn't one right answer, but a much deeper understanding. It totally recasts the teacher as an empowered intellectual. So far, we've talked a lot about what is in the curriculum. But, and this might be the most profound twist of all, what if the biggest lesson is about what isn't there?
This mind-bending idea comes from educator Elliot Eisner, who called it the null curriculum. He argued that what schools don't teach can be just as important as what they do teach. The simple act of leaving a subject out sends a powerful message. This isn't important. So what kind of things live in this null curriculum? Well, it could be huge essential life skills like parenting or personal finance. It's often the connections between subjects, like how art history was shaped by scientific discoveries. Some critics even say we leave out the best parts of the subjects themselves, the wonder, the joy, the human drama. By completely omitting these things, we send a clear signal that these ways of thinking and being just don't matter, at least not in an official sense.
So when you put all these pieces together, you start to see it. You realize that the school curriculum isn't some neutral, fixed list of subjects that fell from the sky.
It's a choice. Every single part of it is a choice. A choice that reflects our deepest values, our beliefs, and our politics. It is the blueprint for the kind of people we are hoping to create and the kind of society we want to become. Understanding these hidden forces, from Dewey's focus on experience to Apple's hidden curriculum and Eisner's null curriculum, it's like getting a new pair of glasses to see the world of education. It lets you see the blueprint underneath it all. So that leaves us with one final big question. Now that you can see the blueprint, what would you change?